Today, I want to talk about a power we all have, but often forget to use. It's the power to stay calm, no matter who we're dealing with, whether it's a rude stranger, a difficult coworker, or a loved one on a bad day. How we respond defines who we are far more than how they act. Let me start with a truth. You can't control other people, but you can always control your response. Staying calm is not weakness. It's not passive. It's powerful. When emotions rise, calm is strength. When someone pushes your buttons, calm is clarity. And when chaos surrounds you, calm is your anchor. So, how do you stay calm even when you're challenged, criticized, or disrespected? In the split-second moments after someone says something offensive, frustrating, or shocking, your brain is racing to interpret, categorize, and react. Most people don't realize that this reaction happens so quickly because it's largely driven by the amygdala, the emotional center of your brain. This part of the brain is wired for survival. It's fast, but not always wise. That's why the ability to pause, even for just a few seconds, can mean the difference between reacting emotionally and responding intelligently. Pausing allows you to regain control. In that brief moment of stillness, you're not suppressing your feelings. You're creating space to process them. That space is powerful. It gives your higher brain, the prefrontal cortex, a chance to engage. That's the part of the brain responsible for logic, reasoning, and decision making. In other words, pausing helps shift you from fight or flight to observe and choose. We often feel pressure to respond immediately, especially in high stress or confrontational situations. But urgency is often an illusion. Most of the time, you don't need to answer right away. In fact, a rushed reaction usually causes more damage, burned bridges, hurt feelings, or regret. A calm, intentional pause signals maturity. It's a way of saying, I respect this moment enough to respond with clarity, not chaos. The beauty of a pause is that it doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be a deep breath, a moment of silence, a quick sip of water. Even a gentle, let me think about that. These tiny acts are like hitting the reset button on your nervous system. They give you a moment to recenter, reframe, and reassess what's really happening. When you pause, you're not just slowing the conversation down. You're slowing yourself down. You're checking in. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What's really being said here? And what part of me wants to react? These self-checks only take a few seconds, but they're incredibly revealing, and they help ensure that your response aligns with your values, not just your emotions. Pausing also helps with perspective. It reminds you that what someone says in anger, frustration, or ignorance is not necessarily a reflection of truth. It might not even be about you. That moment of silence gives you a chance to detach from the emotional bait and see the situation more clearly. You step back, not to disengage, but to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. In tense interactions, people often escalate because they feel provoked. But what if you didn't escalate? What if, instead of matching their energy, you diffused it with your calm presence? The pause helps you do exactly that. It breaks the pattern. It sends a message that you're not playing by the rules of reactivity. You're choosing to lead with emotional intelligence. Pausing also prevents regret. So many times we look back on an argument or a text we sent in anger and think, I wish I had waited. That wish is a signal of growth. It tells you that your reaction wasn't aligned with who you truly are. The pause is the practice that gets you there, to that future version of you who doesn't need to explode to feel powerful. In leadership, relationships, and everyday life, the person who can pause holds the real power. Power over themselves, power over the tone of the conversation, power over the outcome. They don't give others control over their emotions. They know that their inner peace is too valuable to be handed over to anyone else's behavior. Of course, pausing doesn't mean suppressing your voice or emotions. It doesn't mean you let disrespect slide or stay silent forever. It simply means you delay your reaction long enough to choose a better one. One that serves you, one that reflects strength, not weakness, one that brings calm, not chaos. This kind of pause is a practice. It won't come naturally at first, especially if you're used to reacting quickly. But the more you build the habit, the easier it becomes. Start with small moments. When you get cut off in traffic, when someone disagrees with you online, when you're misunderstood in a conversation. These are practice reps. Each pause builds your calm muscle. Over time, the pause becomes part of you. It becomes your edge. You'll notice yourself rising above situations that once triggered you. You'll feel the quiet confidence that comes from not needing to have the last word. And in those moments, you'll realize this is what power really feels like. Not control over others, but control over yourself. One of the greatest shifts you can make in your life, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, is learning not to take things personally. It sounds simple, but it's far from easy. Most of us were conditioned to view people's words and actions as reflections of our own worth. When someone criticizes us, ignores us, or treats us unfairly, we immediately internalize it. We think, what did I do wrong? Or worse, what's wrong with me? But here's the truth. What people do is far more about them than it is about you. When you take things personally, you're assuming that others are always reacting to you. But most of the time, they're reacting to their own stress, fears, past wounds, or unmet needs. Their tone, their choice of words, even their silence, is shaped by their inner world, not yours. The mistake is believing that you are the center of someone else's emotional storm. In reality, you might just be standing in the rain of their unresolved pain. This shift in perception is incredibly freeing. When someone snaps at you or dismisses your ideas, your instinct may be to feel attacked or diminished. But pausing to consider that they might be carrying something you can't see creates room for compassion and distance. You begin to understand that their behavior is a projection, not a definition. It's not personal. It's patterned. Let's be honest. Some people are hurting, and hurt people often hurt others. When someone lashes out, they might be acting from a place of fear or insecurity. Their behavior may be rooted in childhood trauma, daily stress, or chronic dissatisfaction. You just happen to be the person in front of them. Taking that personally is like blaming yourself for a passing storm. You didn't cause the weather, you just walked through it. Taking things personally also makes you reactive and defensive. You start building walls, carrying grudges, and guessing yourself. That emotional weight accumulates. It distorts your self-image and drains your peace. But when you release the need to personalize every slight, you protect your energy. You remain open, but not vulnerable to every passing comment or judgment. This doesn't mean you ignore all feedback or dismiss accountability. There is a difference between constructive criticism and personal attacks. The key is discernment. When you know who you are, you can evaluate feedback without absorbing unnecessary negativity. You learn to ask, is there truth in this? Instead of, what's wrong with me? That one question shifts you from victim to student, from wounded to wise. Another powerful aspect of not taking things personally is recognizing that you too have your moments. You've probably said something in frustration that didn't reflect your true intentions. You've likely had days where stress made you less kind than you wanted to be. Remembering your own imperfections creates room for grace. If you want others to give you the benefit of the doubt, you must be willing to offer it as well. Social media especially amplifies this struggle. A single comment can ruin someone's day. A like with held can feel like rejection. But again, not everything is about you. People are often distracted, overwhelmed, or navigating their own battles. They're not always thinking of you when they speak, or when they don't. Don't let someone's absence of attention become the measure of your self-worth. Releasing the habit of taking things personally is an act of emotional liberation. You are not here to carry the emotional projections of others. You are not responsible for how people interpret your presence. What you are responsible for is how you carry yourself, how you respond, and how much peace you allow to be stolen by someone else's mood or misjudgment. There's also power in neutrality. Imagine how peaceful life would feel if you could listen without always feeling judged, observe without always feeling attacked, and engage without always needing approval. That's the gift of not personalizing everything. It allows you to be present without being pierced. You become emotionally steady because your value isn't up for negotiation every time someone expresses a mood. It takes practice to reach that level of detachment. Start small. The next time someone is short with you, remind yourself, this isn't about me. The next time someone criticizes you unfairly, pause and think, they might be projecting. Over time, this becomes a reflex. Not coldness, not arrogance, but strength, a quiet knowing that your worth doesn't hinge on the shifting winds of external opinion. Eventually, you'll find that life feels lighter. You won't walk around on emotional eggshells, and you won't be constantly bracing for approval or rejection. Instead, you'll stand grounded in the truth that other people's behavior is their story, not your script, and that single truth will shield your peace in even the most unpredictable moments. Breathing is something we all do all the time, and yet most of us are barely aware of it. We take around 20 breaths a day, and still we rarely pay attention to a single one. But here's the quiet truth. Your breath is your built-in remote control for calm. When you master your breath, you master your nervous system. And when you master your nervous system, you gain power over how you think, feel, and respond, even in the most challenging moments. Most people breathe shallowly from their chest, especially when they're stressed, anxious, or angry. This kind of breathing sends signals to the brain that you're under threat. It keeps your body in a low-level state of fight or flight, which means your muscles tense, your heart races, and your mind jumps from one panicked thought to another. This is the perfect setup for reactive, impulsive behavior, and the exact opposite of calm. But when you take control of your breath, slowing it down, deepening it, and drawing it from your diaphragm, you flip the switch. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's built-in mechanism for relaxation and balance. In simple terms, deep breathing tells your brain, you're safe. And when your brain believes you're safe, your entire body follows suit. Your mind clears, your muscles relax, your heart rate steadies. It's incredible how something so simple can be so powerful. In the middle of an argument, a difficult meeting, or even a traffic jam, just one slow inhale and a longer exhale can start to dissolve tension. It doesn't solve the external problem, but it changes the internal response. And sometimes that shift is enough to change the outcome entirely. There's a reason elite athletes, meditation masters, and military personnel all focus on breath training. They understand that control over breath equals control over performance under pressure. Think about it. In a crisis, your breath can either betray you or support you. If you haven't trained it, it will likely go shallow and fast. But if you've practiced, it becomes your anchor. Calm, consistent breathing keeps you composed, no matter the chaos around you. One of the simplest techniques to start with is called box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold again for 4 seconds. This technique not only slows your breathing, but also focuses your mind. You're not just breathing, you're present. You're interrupting the loop of stress and choosing to reset. In just a minute or two, you can return to clarity. Breathwork can also help you become more emotionally aware. Oftentimes, we don't even realize we're triggered until our body tells us. Your chest might tighten, your breath might get choppy. These are clues. They're signals from your body saying, something's off. By tuning into your breath regularly, you develop a sensitivity to your own internal cues. And with awareness comes the power to intervene before things spiral. Beyond stress management, conscious breathing builds long-term emotional resilience. It teaches you how to stay present in discomfort, how to feel your feelings without being ruled by them, and how to ride the waves of tension without getting pulled under. Every time you choose to breathe deeply instead of reacting automatically, you strengthen the part of you that can stay calm under pressure. And here's what's truly beautiful: breath is always available. You don't need a tool, an app, or a perfect setting. Whether you're in a crowded room, in the middle of a conflict, or completely alone, your breath is with you. You can always return to it. You can always use it to ground yourself. In that way, breath is more than just a function. It's a lifeline, a direct path back to presence and peace. Many of us think we need to fix the external world in order to feel okay inside. We try to control people, circumstances, outcomes. But the more you practice breath control, the more you realize that the power was never out there. The real control, the lasting calm, comes from within. It comes from knowing that, even when things are falling apart around you, you can still access stillness inside you. Breathwork doesn't require hours of meditation or perfect technique. Even 3 slow breaths, taken with intention, can shift your entire energy. That's the key: intention. When you breathe with awareness, you send yourself a message that you are present, grounded, and capable. That alone can shift your mood, your mindset, and your moment. So many of our worst reactions come from that brief moment when our nervous system hijacks our logic. But with breath, we reclaim that moment. We stretch it, we give ourselves the gift of space, and in that space, calm begins, not as a concept, but as a physical, emotional reality. That's the secret: breathe first, then respond. Not the other way around. One of the most important steps toward staying calm, no matter who you're dealing with, is understanding what triggers you. Triggers are those hot buttons, words, actions, or situations that ignite strong emotional reactions, often before you even realize it. The key to emotional mastery is not to eliminate triggers entirely, because they're inevitable, but to recognize them clearly and prepare for how you'll respond when they arise. Triggers come from deep within our personal histories. They are often linked to unresolved pain, past traumas, or negative experiences. For example, if you were often criticized growing up, a dismissive comment might hit you harder than it would others. Or if you fear abandonment, a sudden change in plans might provoke intense anxiety. Recognizing these connections allows you to approach your emotional reactions with curiosity rather than judgment. Self-awareness around triggers is a form of emotional intelligence. It's a skill that many people lack, and that's why they get caught off guard and react impulsively. But when you know your triggers, you're no longer a passenger in your emotions. You become the driver. This awareness helps you catch the early signs of emotional escalation before they take over. Recognizing triggers also helps you separate fact from feeling. Often, a trigger will distort your perception of reality. For instance, if someone's tone sounds harsh, your mind might immediately assume they're attacking you personally, even if that wasn't their intent. By knowing your triggers, you remind yourself that your reaction is being amplified by your own inner lens, which might be clouded by past experiences. Triggers are unique to each person. What bothers one individual might not affect another at all. This uniqueness means that your emotional landscape is personal and complex. Understanding your triggers isn't about weakness or defect. It's about embracing your humanity and owning your emotional blueprint. The more you know yourself, the less power triggers will have to unsettle you. One practical way to identify your triggers is through reflection after emotional episodes. Ask yourself, what exactly pushed my buttons? Was it the words, the tone, the timing, or something else? Journaling can help make these patterns visible. Over time, you'll notice recurring themes that point directly to your most sensitive spots. Once you identify your triggers, the next step is preparation. Preparation means planning ahead for how you will respond when triggered. This can include simple tactics like taking a deep breath, pausing, or reminding yourself of the bigger picture. It can also mean setting boundaries or choosing to disengage when possible. Preparation transforms your triggers from surprise attacks into manageable challenges. Knowing your triggers also opens the door to self-compassion. When you understand why you feel a certain way, you can treat yourself with kindness instead of frustration. You're not overreacting or too sensitive. You're responding to something meaningful beneath the surface. This shift in self-talk reduces the intensity of the emotional charge and allows you to approach situations with a calmer mindset. Triggers often involve more than just emotional responses. They can cause physical reactions too. You might notice your heart racing, your muscles tensing, or your stomach churning. These bodily signals are valuable feedback from your nervous system. Learning to recognize these signs early gives you a chance to intervene before your emotions become overwhelming. Awareness of your triggers also improves your interactions with others. When you know what sets you off, you can communicate more clearly and assertively. You might say, "I get anxious when conversations get loud," or "I feel disrespected when I'm interrupted." This kind of communication fosters understanding and reduces conflict because it's based on honesty rather than reaction. Triggers are not static. They can change over time as you grow and heal. What once felt intolerable might become manageable with practice and self-work. Conversely, new triggers can emerge as you encounter different people and situations. Keeping a mindful eye on your emotional responses ensures that you stay connected to your evolving self. Ultimately, knowing your triggers empowers you to take control of your emotional landscape. Instead of being blindsided by feelings you don't understand, you become proactive in managing your reactions. This self-mastery is a cornerstone of calmness. It means you're no longer a slave to circumstance, but an architect of your own peace. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most essential tools you can develop to maintain your calm, especially when dealing with difficult people or stressful situations. Boundaries act as invisible lines that protect your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Without them, you risk being overwhelmed, drained, or disrespected. Clear boundaries create a safe space where you can engage with others without losing yourself in the process. Boundaries begin with self-awareness. You need to understand what you're comfortable with, what your limits are, and what kinds of behavior you will or won't tolerate. This requires honest reflection and sometimes uncomfortable introspection. What kinds of interactions leave you feeling energized versus exhausted? What topics or attitudes do you find triggering or harmful? Defining these is the first step to setting effective boundaries. Once you know your limits, communicating them clearly and respectfully is key. People can't respect boundaries they don't know about. You don't need to be confrontational or defensive. Simply be direct and assertive. For example, saying something like, "I'm happy to talk, but I won't engage if the conversation gets disrespectful," sets a clear expectation. It signals that you value your peace and will not allow it to be compromised. Boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about controlling your own space and energy. When you set a boundary, you're not trying to change someone else's behavior. You're deciding how you will respond. This shift in perspective helps you feel empowered rather than reactive. You become the guardian of your own calm rather than a victim of others' actions. It's also important to recognize that boundaries are not static. They may shift depending on the relationship or situation. What's acceptable with a close friend might not be okay with a coworker. Boundaries are flexible but firm, tailored to fit the context while protecting your core values and needs. This flexibility allows you to navigate complex social dynamics with grace and confidence. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection or conflict. They worry that saying no will upset others or damage relationships. But in reality, unclear or non-existent boundaries often lead to resentment and burnout, which are far more damaging in the long run. Healthy boundaries actually create respect and clarity, which strengthens relationships rather than weakens them. Setting boundaries also requires practicing self-respect. When you honor your own limits, you model how others should treat you. This creates a ripple effect where respect becomes the norm rather than the exception. It builds your self-esteem and reduces anxiety because you're no longer waiting for others to give you permission to protect yourself. It's common to test boundaries at first. People might push back or react defensively when you start setting limits. This is normal. It's part of the process of shifting the dynamics in your relationships. Stand firm but compassionate. Reiterate your boundaries calmly and clearly. Over time, consistent enforcement will lead to healthier interactions and mutual respect. Boundaries also protect your time and energy. Saying no to things that drain you creates space for what truly matters. It allows you to prioritize your well-being, your goals, and your joy. When you guard your energy with boundaries, you're less likely to feel overwhelmed or depleted by the demands of others. Another crucial aspect of boundaries is knowing when to walk away. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, people won't respect your limits. In those cases, the healthiest boundary might be physical or emotional distance. This could mean leaving a conversation, limiting contact, or reevaluating a relationship. Protecting your peace sometimes requires tough decisions. Setting boundaries is also a practice in emotional regulation. When you define what is acceptable, you reduce the unpredictability of interactions. This predictability decreases anxiety because you're not constantly bracing for unexpected emotional attacks or disrespect. Instead, you operate from a place of clarity and calm. Finally, boundaries are an ongoing practice. As you grow, your needs evolve, and so should your boundaries. Regularly check in with yourself to see if your limits still serve you or need adjustment. Maintaining this awareness ensures that your boundaries remain relevant, effective, and empowering. Active listening is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining calm in any interaction, especially when emotions run high or personalities clash. Unlike passive hearing, active listening requires fully focusing on the speaker, understanding their message, and responding thoughtfully. It's a skill that fosters empathy, reduces misunderstandings, and diffuses tension before it escalates. When you practice active listening, you shift your attention away from your own reactions and concerns and tune into the other person's experience. This focus creates a sense of connection and respect. People naturally feel heard and valued when you listen with intention, which lowers their defensiveness and opens the door to calmer, more productive conversations. At the heart of active listening is patience. Instead of rushing to respond or rebut, you allow the speaker to finish their thoughts completely. This simple act can change the dynamic dramatically. Interruptions often signal impatience or judgment, which can escalate conflict. When you hold space for someone's voice, you signal that their feelings and opinions matter, even if you disagree. Listening actively also involves paying attention to nonverbal cues, tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language. These signals often convey more than words alone. By tuning into these subtle messages, you gain a deeper understanding of the speaker's emotional state, which helps you respond with greater sensitivity and care. Reflecting back, what you hear is another key component of active listening. Paraphrasing or summarizing their points shows that you are truly engaged and checking your understanding. For example, saying, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because," reassures the speaker that their message is received. This validation can calm heightened emotions and build trust. Active listening also means resisting the urge to problem solve prematurely. Often, when someone shares a concern, our first impulse is to fix it. But sometimes people simply want to be heard, not corrected or advised. Listening without jumping to solutions demonstrates respect for their experience and keeps the conversation open and collaborative. By practicing active listening, you reduce the likelihood of miscommunication, which is a common source of conflict. When people feel misunderstood, their frustration grows and calm quickly dissolves. But when you listen carefully, you minimize assumptions and ensure that responses are relevant and thoughtful. This skill also fosters your own emotional calm. When you focus intently on another person's words, you quiet your own inner dialogue and anxieties. This mental shift from inward to outward focus interrupts the cycle of reactive thinking, allowing you to stay grounded and present even in challenging moments. Active listening is a way of showing empathy, which strengthens relationships. When others feel truly heard, they are more likely to reciprocate with understanding and patience. This reciprocal respect creates a positive feedback loop that supports calm and cooperation. It's important to remember that active listening requires practice and intention. It's easy to slip into autopilot or get distracted by your own thoughts, especially if you disagree or feel triggered. But with conscious effort, you can train yourself to listen deeply, even when it's difficult. Sometimes practicing active listening means asking open-ended questions that invite elaboration. Questions like, "Can you tell me more about that?" or "How did that make you feel?" encourage deeper dialogue and demonstrate your commitment to understanding. This approach often reveals underlying concerns that, once addressed, reduce tension. Ultimately, active listening transforms conversations from battles to bridges. It shifts the focus from winning or being right to understanding and connection. This shift is fundamental to staying calm no matter who you're dealing with, because it replaces reactivity with thoughtful presence and compassion. One of the most effective secrets to staying calm no matter who you're dealing with is cultivating the ability to stay present in the moment. When your mind drifts into the past or worries about the future, anxiety and stress can quickly take hold. But by anchoring yourself firmly in the here and now, you maintain control over your emotions and reactions, creating space for calm to emerge. Being present means fully experiencing whatever is happening right now without judgment or distraction. It requires letting go of the mental chatter that often fuels our emotional responses. For example, instead of replaying past hurts or anticipating negative outcomes, you focus on the immediate sensory details, the sounds, sights, and sensations around you, which ground you in reality rather than fear or regret. When dealing with difficult people, it's easy to get caught up in assumptions and stories about their motives or your own insecurities. These mental narratives pull you away from the present moment and can intensify feelings of anger or frustration. But when you consciously bring your attention back to what's happening right now, you break the cycle of reactive thinking and reduce the power of those stories. Mindfulness practices are powerful tools to help you stay present. Whether it's focusing on your breath, doing a quick body scan, or simply noticing your surroundings, these techniques train your brain to settle into the current experience. Over time, this habit of mindful presence becomes a natural reflex, especially in stressful situations. Staying present also means accepting the moment as it is, without wishing it were different. Resistance to reality is a common source of distress. When you fight against what's happening, whether it's a difficult conversation or an uncomfortable emotion, you expend energy that could be used for calm and clarity instead. Acceptance, on the other hand, opens the door to peace. It's important to note that being present doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or ignoring problems. Instead, it's about acknowledging your feelings and the situation with openness and curiosity. This non-judge mental awareness helps you respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, which is key to maintaining calm. When you're present, you also improve your ability to listen and communicate effectively. You're less distracted by internal worries or plans, which allows you to engage more fully with others. This deeper connection can ease tensions and foster mutual understanding, making challenging interactions smoother and more productive. The present moment is often overlooked because our minds are so busy with what-ifs and should-haves, but the truth is that the present is the only time we truly have control over. Past events are fixed, and the future is uncertain, but the present moment offers a chance to choose calm, kindness, and clarity. Practicing presence can be as simple as pausing for a few seconds to take a deep breath and observe your surroundings before responding. This tiny break interrupts automatic reactions and allows your brain to engage the rational part of your mind, reducing emotional hijacking and promoting calmness. Another benefit of staying present is that it reduces the tendency to personalize or catastrophize. When you focus on what's actually happening rather than what might be, you create emotional distance from exaggerated fears or assumptions. This distance provides a clearer perspective and helps you stay grounded. Over time, cultivating presence strengthens your resilience. You become less vulnerable to emotional overwhelm because you've trained your mind to stay rooted in reality rather than drifting into anxiety or resentment. This resilience is essential for handling difficult people and situations with grace. Finally, staying present nurtures self-awareness. By consistently checking in with yourself about your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations, you develop insight into your emotional patterns. This awareness is a foundation for emotional intelligence and equips you with the tools to stay calm regardless of external circumstances. One of the most transformative secrets to staying calm no matter who you're dealing with is mastering the art of not taking things personally. When someone says or does something that feels hurtful or unfair, our natural reaction is often to internalize it, as if their words or actions are a reflection of our worth or value. This internalization can ignite intense emotional reactions, cloud our judgment, and shatter our calm. Understanding that what others say and do is often more about them than about you is the first step in breaking this cycle. People's words and behaviors are shaped by their own fears, insecurities, experiences, and perspectives. Often, their negative or aggressive behavior reflects their own struggles, not a true commentary on who you are. Recognizing this helps create a crucial emotional buffer between you and their actions. Taking things personally tends to make us defensive and reactive, which can escalate conflicts and damage relationships. It triggers a fight or flight response where emotions run wild and reasoning becomes difficult. But when you practice detaching yourself, worth from others' opinions or behaviors, you regain control over your emotional state and choose calm instead. This mindset shift requires developing a strong sense of self. When your self-esteem is rooted internally rather than dependent on external validation, you're less vulnerable to the ups and downs of other people's attitudes or comments. This inner security allows you to observe difficult interactions with curiosity instead of feeling attacked. Another important aspect is understanding the role of projection. Often, people project their own issues onto others. Someone who is insecure might lash out to deflect their feelings of inadequacy. When you realize this, it's easier to see their behavior as a mirror of their inner world rather than a personal attack. This realization creates emotional distance and reduces the impact of their words on your peace of mind. Practicing empathy can also support this process. By trying to understand where the other person is coming from, what fears, pressures, or frustrations they might be carrying, you soften your emotional reaction. This doesn't mean excusing bad behavior, but choosing to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness, which preserves your calm. It's helpful to pause and ask yourself, is this really about me? Before reacting, take a moment to consider whether the other person's behavior reflects their own challenges rather than something you caused. This pause creates space to choose a more measured and calm response. Learning not to take things personally also involves setting mental boundaries. You can acknowledge someone's words or actions without absorbing them into your identity. For instance, you might hear criticism, but decide not to let it define your self-worth. This mental boundary protects your emotional well-being. At times, people may deliberately try to provoke you. When you recognize their attempts to bait you, resisting the urge to respond emotionally can be incredibly powerful. Staying calm and detached not only preserves your peace, but also often deflates their attempts to upset you. This approach requires ongoing practice because it goes against deep-seated emotional habits. Our brains are wired to seek connection and approval, so rejection or hostility can feel like threats. But with conscious effort, you can rewire your reactions to be less personal and more objective, which supports calmness. It's also important to remember that not taking things personally doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. Instead, it means acknowledging your emotions without letting them control you. You can feel hurt or frustrated without automatically reacting in ways that escalate tension. Over time, mastering this skill builds emotional resilience. You become less reactive and more grounded, able to face criticism, rejection, or conflict with grace and confidence. This resilience is key to maintaining calm, regardless of who you're dealing with, because it empowers you to stay centered amidst external chaos. One of the most accessible and effective ways to stay calm no matter who you're dealing with is to use deep breathing technique. When stress or tension rises, your body responds with a faster, shallower breath pattern that fuels the fight-or-flight response. By consciously slowing and deepening your breath, you send a powerful signal to your nervous system that it's safe to relax. Deep breathing works by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, digestion, and recovery. This activation counteracts the stress-induced sympathetic nervous system, which triggers heightened alertness and physical tension. When you engage in deep breathing, your heart rate slows, muscles relax, and your mind becomes clearer, creating a foundation for calm. The beauty of deep breathing is its simplicity. It's something you can do anywhere and anytime, whether you're in a tense meeting, stuck in traffic, or facing a difficult person. Because it requires no equipment or preparation, it's an immediate tool to regain composure and emotional balance. One commonly used technique is diaphragmatic breathing, also called belly breathing. Instead of shallow chest breaths, you inhale deeply so that your abdomen expands. This fuller breath increases oxygen intake and signals the brain that it's safe to calm down. Practicing this technique regularly can help make it an automatic response to stress. Another powerful method is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. You inhale quietly through your nose for a count of 4, hold the breath for 7 seconds, and exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 seconds. This specific rhythm promotes relaxation by extending the exhale, which is linked to the parasympathetic nervous system's calming effect. Breathing techniques also serve as a form of mindfulness. When you focus your attention on your breath, you naturally shift your mind away from stressful thoughts or emotional triggers. This redirection reduces anxiety and helps you stay grounded in the present moment, which is essential for maintaining calm. Using breath as a tool for calm is particularly effective because it influences both body and mind simultaneously. The physical act of breathing slowly lowers tension in muscles and reduces the production of stress hormones. At the same time, the mental focus on breathing calms racing thoughts and promotes clarity. In moments of conflict or frustration, you might notice your breath becoming shallow or erratic without realizing it. Training yourself to catch these signs early and respond with deep breathing can prevent emotional escalation. It's like pressing a reset button on your nervous system before reactions spiral out of control. Deep breathing also enhances your emotional regulation. When your nervous system is calmer, you can think more clearly, make better decisions, and respond more thoughtfully to others. This control is crucial for staying composed, especially when dealing with challenging personalities or stressful situations. Regular practice of deep breathing outside of stressful moments builds resilience. When calm becomes a familiar state for your nervous system, it's easier to return to that calm quickly when triggered. This conditioning strengthens your ability to handle difficult interactions with grace. Incorporating deep breathing into your daily routine can be simple. You might start your day with a few minutes of intentional breathing or take short breathing breaks throughout the day. These small habits accumulate, making calmness a default rather than an exception. Finally, deep breathing is a foundational practice that complements other strategies for staying calm. Whether you're setting boundaries, practicing active listening, or staying present, the breath is your anchor, a constant resource to draw upon to maintain emotional balance and peace. One of the key secrets to staying calm, no matter who you're dealing with, is shifting your mindset from dwelling on problems to actively focusing on solutions. When we fixate on problems, our minds tend to spiral into negative thinking, anxiety, and helplessness. This mental loop can heighten frustration and emotional turmoil, making it much harder to maintain calm. The first step in this shift is recognizing when you're stuck in problem-oriented thinking. This usually manifests as ruminating on what went wrong, blaming others, or worrying about worst-case scenarios. While it's natural to acknowledge problems, getting trapped in these thoughts without moving forward drains your energy and exacerbates stress. Focusing on solutions means redirecting your mental energy toward constructive action. Instead of dwelling on obstacles, you ask yourself, what can I do to improve this situation? Or what steps can I take to move forward? This proactive mindset fosters empowerment and reduces feelings of helplessness, which are key to staying calm. A solution-focused approach encourages creativity and openness. When you move beyond complaining or blaming, your brain engages in problem-solving mode. This engagement activates your prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thinking and decision making, which calms emotional reactivity. It's also important to understand that focusing on solutions doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. Rather, it's about balancing awareness of challenges with a commitment to finding ways to address them. This balance prevents overwhelm and keeps you centered on what's possible. When dealing with difficult people, a solution-oriented mindset shifts your perspective from frustration with their behavior to considering how to improve the interaction. For example, instead of getting stuck on their negativity, you might explore ways to communicate more effectively or set clearer boundaries. Focusing on solutions can also mean collaborating with others. When you approach conflicts with a mindset of mutual problem solving, you invite cooperation rather than confrontation. This collaborative spirit helps maintain calm because it transforms the interaction into a team effort rather than a battle. It's helpful to break down complex problems into manageable parts. By focusing on one step at a time, you avoid feeling overwhelmed. This stepwise approach builds momentum and confidence, reinforcing your calm and sense of control. Sometimes the best solution is simply changing your attitude or response, recognizing that you cannot control others, but you can control your reaction, puts the power back in your hands. This realization is calming because it shifts your focus from external chaos to internal agency. Another practical tool is reframing. This means consciously changing how you interpret a problem. For instance, instead of seeing a difficult person as a source of stress, you might view them as an opportunity to practice patience and emotional resilience. This positive reframing promotes calmness and growth. Focusing on solutions also involves self-compassion. Sometimes the problem may be your own expectations or perfectionism. Being kind to yourself and allowing room for mistakes reduces self-criticism, which in turn lowers stress and supports calm. Finally, maintaining a solution-focused outlook requires practice and persistence. It's easy to slip back into problem-focused thinking, especially when emotions are high, but with consistent effort, you can train your mind to lean toward constructive action, creating a steady foundation of calm regardless of the situation. One of the most crucial strategies for staying calm, no matter who you're dealing with, is learning to set boundaries clearly and respectfully. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what behavior you will accept and what you won't. Without them, interactions can become overwhelming, disrespectful, or draining, making it nearly impossible to maintain your composure. Setting boundaries begins with self-awareness. You need to know what you value, what makes you uncomfortable, and where your limits lie. This self-knowledge empowers you to communicate your needs confidently, rather than reacting emotionally when those needs are ignored or violated. When you set boundaries clearly, you remove ambiguity from interactions. People are more likely to respect limits when they understand them. Vague or inconsistent boundaries can lead to confusion, repeated boundary crossings, and increased frustration for all parties involved. Clarity in communication is essential. Use simple, direct language to express your boundaries without apology or defensiveness. For example, instead of saying, "I don't know if this is okay, but can you please stop interrupting me?" say, "Please let me finish before you respond." This straightforward approach leaves little room for misunderstanding. Respectfulness is equally important when setting boundaries. The goal is not to control or punish others, but to protect your well-being and foster healthy interactions. A respectful tone and attitude increase the likelihood that your boundaries will be honored without creating resentment or conflict. It's important to recognize that setting boundaries may provoke resistance or pushback, especially if others are used to crossing your limits. In these moments, staying calm and consistent reinforces the importance of your boundaries and helps establish new patterns of interaction. Boundaries are not about building walls, they're about creating space for mutual respect. When you set boundaries, you invite others to honor your needs and, in turn, encourage them to set their own boundaries. This reciprocal respect builds healthier relationships and more peaceful interactions. Learning to say no is a fundamental part of boundary setting. Many people struggle with guilt or fear of rejection when declining requests or demands, but saying no respectfully is a powerful way to protect your time, energy, and emotional health, which are essential for staying calm. It's helpful to remember that setting boundaries is a form of self-care. By prioritizing your limits, you reduce stress and prevent burnout. This self-care sustains your ability to engage with others calmly and effectively, even in challenging situations. Practicing boundary setting takes courage, especially with people who are important to you or who have a history of pushing your limits. But the long-term benefit, greater respect, clearer communication, and improved emotional balance, make it worth the effort. Over time, consistent boundary setting strengthens your self-esteem and emotional resilience. You become more confident in asserting your needs and less affected by others' attempts to overstep. This confidence is a key ingredient in maintaining calm, no matter who you're dealing with. Finally, remember that boundaries can be flexible. As relationships and situations evolve, your boundaries might need adjustment. Checking in with yourself regularly and communicating changes clearly ensures that your boundaries remain relevant and effective, supporting ongoing calm and respect. Staying calm in the face of difficult people and challenging situations isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is perfect. It's about cultivating inner strength, clarity, and emotional intelligence that allow you to respond with grace rather than react with frustration. When you practice these keys, understanding your triggers, staying present, listening actively, setting boundaries, and focusing on solutions, you build a foundation of calm that no external chaos can easily shake. Remember, calmness is a skill, not a trait. It requires intention, patience, and practice. There will be moments when you stumble, when emotions rise, and when the temptation to react impulsively feels strong. But each time you choose calm, you grow stronger and more resilient. By committing to these principles, you not only protect your peace of mind, but also transform your interactions and relationships. Calmness invites understanding, diffuses conflict, and opens the door to connection and respect, even with the most challenging people. So, the next time you face tension or difficulty, breathe deeply, stay present, and remind yourself, calmness is your power, your choice, and your secret. Use it well, and you'll find that no matter who you're dealing with, you can meet every situation with peace and confidence. Thank you.